Today I want to talk about betting systems and how you go about building betting systems and how you go about building profitable betting systems that are going to make you a long-term profit. Now, the way most people begin is they start by using information that is readily available to everyone, such as the class of a race, or the distance, or the age of the horses, or maybe how many days it's been since the horse last ran, whether they won last time out, race type, all weather, flat, jumps, hurdle, turf, whatever it might be. Information that is readily available. This information is available to all bettors. Anybody who wants to bet on a horse race opens up a newspaper. It doesn't even need to be the Racing Post or a specialist paper. It could be the Sun or the Mail. They go to the horse racing section and all of that information is readily available for them to look at. And what this means is that the odds that the bookmakers are giving have already taken into account this information, because everybody knows it, the bookmakers know it, and the bookmakers know that everybody knows it. So when they calculate their odds, they're already taking this information into account. And that means it's impossible to get an edge because it's already been accounted for. The way we get an edge is by using information or finding things that nobody else has found. And obviously we can only do that by using information that nobody really has access to, or at least the general betting population of the country doesn't have access to. So most of us start the journey into building betting systems by using this standard information that is available anywhere. And then what we find that maybe we're getting a decent strike rate, maybe we're getting 20% or 30% strike rate, that's great, but we just can't make a profit. It seems to be impossible to make a profit. So we start putting more conditions in. We start making more conditions. So, if it's an all-weather race that's class 6 and the horse won within 3 days, and it's carrying a certain amount of weight, and its brother's cousin knows someone, then make it a bet. So we start adding these levels of rules and information in, and that doesn't make us a profitable system. What it makes us is something that looks like it might be profitable, but as soon as you start to use it, it's no longer profitable. It's no longer making a profit on real racing, but it made a profit when you were building it out. And the reason for that is something called backfitting. So this system has been backfitted. It's been overfitted to historical data. Essentially, what this is you are taking historical data and you are finding where something, a set of rules may have made a profit historically, but that doesn't relate to anything that's going to make a profit for you in the future, which is why as soon as you start to use it on live racing, it doesn't work. It just falls apart at the seams. So the more rules you put in, the more likely you are to be backfitting and to be overfitting your rules to historical data. So you want to try and stay away from doing that. However, if you've got this information, if you've got this standardized sort of information like race type, class, going distance, and you want to build something from that, one way that you can do this is to use what we call micro angles. And this is essentially backfitting, but we can step back from the issue of it not working in the future using the process I'm about to show you, I'm about to tell you. So we do that by looking for tiny angles within that data, small subsets, really small. You might only get 30 possible selections a year, but they've made a profit. And we use something called the AE ratio, or PIV, pool impact value. Depending on what country you're from, you may know it as the AE ratio, or you may know it as PIV, a pool impact value. But essentially what this piece of information does is it's a way we can calculate whether we are likely to continue to make a profit or not from these tiny subsections, these tiny micro angles. And the way we calculate this is very simply we take the number of winners that we have found in our selection process, and we divide it by the number of expected winners. And the expected winners, it sounds super complicated, it's really not. The expected winners is quite simply the number of winners you have got based on the odds of the horse. So assuming a horse had odds of evens, 1-to-1 or decimal 2, that indicates this horse wins 50% of the time, or we would expect this horse to win 50% of the time. And what we then do is, if this horse theoretically ran 100 times, winning 50% of the time, we'd expect there to be 50 winners out of that 100. Again, it's an expectation. It's not a fact, it's just based on the odds, this is what we expect. So we can do this for every single horse in our selections. And if you'd like to know how to do that, shoot me an email. I'll send you a link to one of the articles on the blog. If you're watching this video, then I'll put it below the video. We'll put a link to how you can calculate this yourself. And it's a very, very simple calculation. And what that gives us is a number. And if this number is 1 or higher, that means that we have an edge, we have an advantage, because we are finding winners more often than we would expect to. And if that number is less than 1, that means we don't have an edge. We're at a disadvantage because we're actually finding winners less often than we would expect to based on the odds. So that simple number can allow us to dig into these rules. So if we have a rule-based system that we found, maybe we're looking at Class 6 on all-weather races, non-favourites who ran within the last 3 days, and you'll find that it makes a huge loss, but there's quite a lot of horses. So let's dig that right down. And maybe we find, when we dig into this, that actually, if we focus just on the horses who've raced in the last 3 to 5 days, but have made a profit over the same race type or the same track or the same distance or going, they make a profit. If we bet those horses, they make a profit. I'm not saying that they do, this is just an example. But that's an example of a micro angle. Now, there may only be 30 of these horses a year. However, those 30 have made a profit. And if the AE ratio or the PIV tells us that it's greater than 1, let's say it's 1.05 or 1.1, we've got a 5% or a 10% advantage here, then the chances that this is going to work going forwards is much higher. So we would save that as a micro angle because we're not finding many of them. So we would save that as a micro angle. And once we've got that micro angle, I then don't recommend that you just go out and bet on those horses. I don't recommend that at all. You would then use that as a contender process. So it throws up a few horses every now and these are possible horses to bet on. You then go in, you have a look at them in a bit more detail, you investigate them a bit more. Do they like the conditions? What's the competition like in the race? Are they likely to be able to perform? Have they been performing well recently? All these other facets of information that make up a horse race. You just have a look at those, spend 5 or 10 minutes in the same way I show in other videos on the blog, in our training videos for our members, which are also available on YouTube. In all of those, you can see we just check our selections to see how well they're likely to perform. So that's what we then do with these micro angles. We go out, we use them as contenders, we go and check them. And if we then want to place a bet, if we're then convinced that this horse has what it takes to win the race, then we place our bet. And that's how we can use standardized information to build betting systems into micro angles that we can then use as contenders to actually place profitable bets. Now, obviously, to do this, you need a lot of micro angles, because if you're only looking at 30 selections or so a year in each one, you're going to need a lot to get a regular amount of betting. But it is possible to find a lot. My personal preference is that I feel that this is a lot of work to create a long-term profitable strategy. It requires a lot of monitoring. You need to create a lot, and I mean tens or hundreds of micro angles that you need to track every day to find those possible contenders, to have enough volume of bets. And for me, that is a lot of work to create a long-term profitable betting strategy. A far better way, I believe, is to actually use information that is not publicly available, and to build your strategies and systems around that information, which, because it's not publicly available, you start off at an advantage already. Because only, comparatively speaking, from the millions of bettors, only comparatively a few people are going to be using this information. Now, obviously, I'm biased. I think that the Race Advisors Pro Members Club and our ratings and our software and our tools has the best information, the best ratings, the best data, and the best tools available that aren't available just to the general public. So I'm biased there, but you can also use other tools from other people if you prefer, or whatever. But my preference for building out a long-term strategy would not be to go down this route of micro angles, of trying to create systems from readily available information, because whatever way you look at it, your edge is always going to be tiny, because that information is available. So even when you find these micro angles, you're likely to have edges of 2%, 3%, 5%, as opposed to 10, 15, 20, or in a blog post that I recently wrote on the Race Advisor, 75% edge from one rating. On a blog post that we recently wrote on the Race Advisor, a 75% edge. You're not going to get that from standardized information, purely because it is standard. It is available to everybody, including the bookmakers, and most people who go to the races, who bet on the races, aren't like you. They don't want to learn how to make a long-term profit. So they're not looking for this extra information that is there, that is available. But if you want to go down that route, that is how you do it. I get a lot of people asking how we can use standard information to go down that route. So that is one of the ways you can use standard information. It's personally not my preference, but it is possible, and I do know of people who do it. I know of people who run thousands of micro angles to do exactly that. So it is possible. You can make a good long-term profit doing it. However, my preference is to use information that's not readily available, ratings that aren't readily available to the entire betting market. I would love to hear from you. I would love to know if you use micro angles, if you build betting systems, or if you've tried to build betting systems using this standardized data and have come across this exact problem that, you know, it's all looking good and you get down and you just can't get it into a profit. You know, you're losing a bit all the time. You just cannot find an angle within the betting system to make a profit. And now, if that is you, you know why. But please do leave me a comment. Let me know. I would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.